There's a lot of weird cultural things. Well, they're weird to me because I'm from the United States and my culture is different. But when I got down to Mexico, things were a little bit different. Like just weird little things like walking by people in the street and saying, hello, or how are you? In Mexico, it's very different because I think they're actually right. If you think about it, here, let me explain. In Mexico, you don't greet somebody in passing by saying hello or how are you, because that indicates that you want to stop and you want to have a long conversation with them. If you're walking by someone and you just casually want to say hi or greet them, you say good afternoon or good morning, good day, those kinds of things, and they'll say it back to you. But if you're walking by somebody and you say, hey, how are you? And you just walk by, they're going to look at you really funny because they're like, don't you want to know how I am? What's going on? So if you say, how are you? Expect to stop, and they're going to explain how they're doing and what's going on, and you're going to talk back to them about what's going on with you. It's kind of funny because how are you does not mean hello. Because in the United States, it seems like we go, hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. And that's it. That's the end. In Mexico, no. How are you means, how are you? They want to know how you're doing, what's going on. It's kind of funny.
The Mexican people are very open. They love to talk to you. Sometimes they love to talk to you so much more than you want to talk to them. But it's always wonderful to most people are willing to listen to you. They may not be interested, but they're usually very polite about how they deal with it. They do have a cool tradition that I'll talk about called Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. But it's funny because they'll tack it on to Halloween, which is a tradition that we have here in the United States. And so it's the last two, October 31st Halloween, and then November 1st and 2nd are Dia de los Muertos. It's almost like 3 days of Halloween, it feels like. And what they'll do is they'll leave out bread, some of their nicest sweet bread, on a little altar with a picture of their ancestors that have passed away. And the tradition is, it's not really believed, but it's the tradition to leave out bread as an offering to the dead people. They'll come and they'll eat it, essentially, and it's kind of a way of showing respect for the people that have come before. And so as you're going around, beginning of November, you'll see a lot of these altars, these little tables, appear all over the place, and you can buy bread really cheaply at that time. I mean, you can always buy bread cheaply, but that's when they come out with the best breads, is during that time, because it's a high consumer time for buying bread. There were definitely areas of my mission that were more dangerous than others. There were stories, obviously, there was crime in every city that we went to, but some of the worst was probably in Acapulco. It's ranked as one of the top 3 or 4 most dangerous cities in North America. Not to be worried though, because we never ever had an issue with missionaries, running into bad people or ever being in danger. I just remember a few times where I was close to or heard gunshots or people that were breaking the law, but never anything that affected us. I felt very protected while I was there. It's actually my favorite area to serve. And so it really goes to show that you can live in the world, but not really be affected by it as long as you're living the commandments. It was hard to see how some of these things affected members of the church, of the wards there, but the common theme was if you're living right, if we have the gospel, no matter what happens, you're going to get through it. And most of the time you're going to be protected, but if not, you'll, Heavenly Father will be there for you.
So Puebla itself, the only missionaries in the mission that got cars were the assistants, the secretaries, and so most of the rest of us, when we had to get around, sometimes we could get rides from members, but we mainly got around through public transportation, which was with buses. And the buses in Mexico can be a little crazy. They have a lot of buses that follow similar routes, and so you can stand on a corner and have 5 buses go by, and none of them will be the bus you're looking for. And when it does come by, they don't really have scheduled stops. Like, they don't. It's not like here in the States where like every quarter mile they have like a nice little bus stop with the cover, with like the little cover over the bench. No, it's just you stand on the corner and you hold out your hand and signal for the bus, and hopefully you signal the right one and you catch the eye of the correct driver. Driving is kind of crazy as well. I had one area where we lived a block away from one of the main streets in the city that went from like the main bus station where we would have transfers, and it just went around straight to downtown. And so the traffic there was pretty bad. We would go there, and yeah, they would just take us around on buses. They would drive kind of fast, and like really fast. Speed bumps were always a fun time. The weather is pretty nice. It actually kind of reminds me of Provo, except without the snow, which I loved because I'm from Arizona and I'm not a huge fan of the snow. But we would, I would use a sweater every now and then, but we were mainly fine with just a regular white shirt and tie. And that made it really nice. The city is surrounded by a couple mountains, and so you have to the north, about to the north is this mountain called La Malinche, and Malinche is along the border between the states of Puebla and Tlaxcala, so it's right in the middle of the mission. And they allow missionaries to go up that mountain. Sometimes, if you're in the right zone, then you can get permission to spend part of a P-day being able to go up the mountain as a zone. And it's pretty cool. You can get a cool view of a lot of the mission. And then to the west, between Mexico City and Puebla, are these mountains called, one of them is Popocatepetl, which is an Aztec word meaning like the mountain that smokes. And it's a volcano. Hasn't really had any problems for a while. Don't worry about that. It's probably not going to blow up on you. But it's pretty cool. And it's just like your regular mountain. It just goes like that, like a regular mountain peak. And then there's always snow towards the top of it. And sometimes you can see a little bit of the smoke coming up from the volcano. And right next to it is another one called Iztaccíhuatl. Some people just call it Ista for short because it's a confusing name. And they also refer to it as the sleeping woman, or la mujer dormida, because it looks like it's the profile of a woman lying down, kind of like Timpanogos here in Provo. And so those mountains, they're like, you can see those from pretty much anywhere in the city. Sometimes if you're in the right light, then way off in the distance you can see a mountain between Puebla and Veracruz, and it's the highest point in Mexico, and it's called Pico De Orizaba, or just Pico, and it's also it's really high. But it's nice. Puebla's nice because you can actually see these things. It's not like Mexico City, a couple hours away, where it's filled with smoke and grime and different things all the time. And so the skies are fairly clear. There's an observatory kind of thing in the middle of the city, and so you're able to have decent skies. It's not at all like it's not like Mexico City, even though a lot of people say that they're really similar. Puebla is a lot nicer place to live. It's fairly clean. There's like a river that runs through part of the city. It's kind of a dirty river, but but Puebla itself is really cool. There's the downtown area has a lot of fun places you can visit. Has the Zócalo, which is it's like the main square in the middle of the town. And while you're there, you can see like the state cathedral. They have fast food places around there. You can go to a McDonald's or different places like that if you want American food, or you can find other like more authentic Mexican places. I said before, there's always the Cinco de Mayo forts, and they have a lot of different, along with the forts themselves, I think there's like a museum. There's a giant monument you can see from the road. And from the hill you can see all around the city. Puebla also has a professional soccer team, and I think they might also have I think they have a baseball team as well. You'll never hear about the baseball team. It's mainly just a soccer team, and even then they're a bit of a joke in the Mexican Soccer League. But everyone always talk. A lot of times in Puebla, you'll see people go like this. It's kind of, and they say this phrase that means like, they say "pon la de Puebla," which is like put on the Puebla thing, because the soccer jersey has a stripe right down the side, and it means just kind of like, gonna share it. Like when they go like that, it just means like, share it with me, or like help me out here with something. And so it's kind of a cool thing that comes from the soccer team with that. That's about it. From Puebla as well, the bus stop in the main city, people can get around. There's an airport outside of town, which is how the American missionaries got in and out. We would like when we left, we drove from where we were staying and went to this airport, and then flew to Houston, Texas, and from there we all went to our separate homes. The missionaries that are native speaking, or that are from, I guess I should say, that are from Mexico or other parts of Latin America, will instead go to Mexico City. But from my experience, when I was there, they didn't want the Americans going to Mexico City if they didn't have to, because it's Mexico City. And so they just had us fly out of Puebla instead and take a little bit more time but safer time of going home.
Just a general don't. Mexico City isn't the safest place. Actually, I would never go back there if I wasn't a missionary. It gets really, really dangerous. But like as a missionary, you feel safe because you're protected. And I was fearless. I would walk outside by myself, not by myself, but like just I wasn't afraid of dangers that people would talk about. But general do's and don'ts: don't walk out, don't be outside at night. You kind of learn in areas what places to avoid and go to, and to go and not to go to. If there's a dark alley, don't go down it. You should try and help people, but sometimes there's drunken guys that are on the street, or they're drugged, and they'll yell at you, say, "Hey, elders, come here," and they'll want to talk to you. And I would try and avoid them generally, because you can be nice and you go talk to them and you try and invite them, and they'll seem open and, "Yeah, I want to do that. I want to change my life. I'm drunk. I don't want to do this anymore." But generally, they won't even remember what you talked about, and you'll never find them. It's really hard to talk to them if they're not coherent, so just kind of avoid them. If they ask for money, give them, always have a couple pesos in your pocket. Oh, that's another thing. One thing to do is hide your money. I got really good at that. So I have, when you take out your rent money every month from the bank, I would put a couple bills in my tie. I put a couple bills in my sock. I'd have a couple bills in my pocket. I have a couple bills in this pocket. I'd have money everywhere. So just kind of split it up. So if they search you, I'm not saying they will, but if you're on a bus and someone comes on and says, "Give me your money," you can just give them some and then they'll go away.
I guess the first thing is make sure you eat plenty of the food so the sisters don't get offended. They sometimes do, because they go out on a lot. They do a lot to prepare that. Just eat a lot of food, and sometimes it won't be so good, but you'll be so hungry it won't matter. Just be sure that you eat plenty of food. But I guess also expect to get sick. You'll get sick, but I mean that's just kind of a part of it. It depends too. There's some missionaries, it's usually the American missionaries, because they're not used to that kind of stuff, that they'll get sick, pretty sick at first, but I mean they get used to it right away. I didn't get sick that much in my mission. When I did, it was because the water we were showering with wasn't very clean, but we solved that problem pretty quick. Another tip, as far as I didn't know of really any missionaries that got robbed. I never had a run-in or anything like that. But just in case, what we do is with the missionary handbook, I don't know if they still give them out like this, the missionary white handbook, but ours came with a plastic cover, and just about every missionary would put their money and their cards in the plastic cover. And then just over that, they'd put a picture of their family, or one of the cards of Christ or something. And that way, I mean, you can't even see the money in there. But still carry a wallet with a little bit of money. That's what it says in the missionary handbook. Make sure you have a little bit to offer. But don't carry everything around with you. I wouldn't when you go to buy things, I wouldn't like pull out like a 500 peso bill or something and wave it around kind of thing. But I mean, we never had any sort of problems. As far as like traveling, well, we usually just traveled on bus. My mission isn't a biking mission. There were a few biking areas, but I think the mission president did away with that completely. And so we usually traveled by bus. So make sure that you save plenty of your money because sometimes, I don't know, one of my areas we would spend about like a quarter of our week. No, it would be about half of what we could spend in a week we would spend on buses because like it was just such a big area and stuff. But just make sure also walking around, avoid dark areas. That's also what it says in the missionary handbook. Follow the missionary handbook and you'll be fine. Just avoid dark areas because I mean anywhere in the United States or any other country there'll be problems. There can be problems if you're going to sketchy areas. Avoid those sketchy areas, especially at night.
I mean, it's kind of heard that Veracruz is a dangerous place, but it's not really, I mean, it doesn't really affect you that much. There are some dangerous things going on, including drug trafficking, but sometimes, like, I'd hear that someone was killed, but it doesn't really affect the missionaries that much. I mean, if something is going on, I mean, the missionaries will just stay at home, but it doesn't really ever happen. So it's not too much to worry about. I never got robbed. So, I mean, just don't take pictures of the Marines. Because my second companion, before I was his companion, like right before, he was on a bus and he saw some Marines like walking out. He just wanted to take a picture of them. And his flash was on, so they noticed the picture from inside the bus. And then they came onto the bus and like pointed their gun at him and told him to erase the picture. So yeah, that was a pretty weird experience for him. Sometimes there were like shootings going on, so I guess just watch out for that. Oh, actually, 2 times when I was in Cordoba, we were on our bus, like going to like a zone conference or something, and there was a ton of people like filling the streets on the highway, and we couldn't, like, no cars could go by. That was going on for like a couple months or so, or maybe more, because of the teachers, like the school, the educational system was having some sort of rework. So there are a lot of teachers protesting, and also like sugarcane workers protesting. So they just blocked the streets and we couldn't get by, so we had to, like, they just take over the buses, so we had to get so that they could travel to where they wanted to get to. So we just had to get off the bus and hope that someone would help us, and we managed. Sometimes you can just either find a taxi, like once we had a taxi get us, like, take us very far and just go another way, but he had to just like race it, basically. Well, not race it, but like just, we were the last car to get out before they blocked the second entrance. So yeah, that was kind of intense. But as for transportation, there's a ton of public transportation that's really nice. So like there's lots of buses and taxis, and they don't really cost that much. I wouldn't spend all your money on them though. and yeah, so you can pretty much get wherever you need to. Like one of my areas had a lot of like little towns. Like sometimes the areas are super big because you just have all these little towns you can go to. So it's really cool, like getting to know different places and a lot of humble people. In terms of animals, well, as for dogs, there's lots of dogs and also cats in the street, but it's not really that dangerous. I mean, but sometimes, well, if you want to get rid of dogs, all you have to do is like pick up a rock. You don't have to throw it. Sometimes you have to, but if even just doing the action of picking up the rock is enough for them to run away. So, and there were a couple times like where a dog bit my companion or I, but not really seriously, just like on the ankle or something like that. It's just a cool experience. But yeah, it's not too much to worry about. There's one place that's called Puebla where there's some ruins, and there's some other places as well where you can check out the ruins. You probably have the opportunity to do that. So, and there's one place that's called Los Tuxtlas that's pretty well known as being like really beautiful, and actually it's also known for having like witches. There's some, or at least people that think they're witches or something, and just kind of weird things like eating edible glass and things like that. But so that's something you'll probably hear about, like in the city of Catemaco or something like that. Well, the people are nice. I mean, just get to know everyone. I mean, you can just talk to people randomly on the street.